Prayeshva Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Yam Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayana Virahakatara Juhava Putreti Tanmayatayo Taravo Binedustam Sarva Bhuta Hridayam Munimanatosmi. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. I'm very happy to be with you. Unfortunately, as Rasakrida said, we will not be able to meet till the end of the month because I have some urgent work to finish. Nevertheless, I want to continue our journey to the 10th canto, and I just want to remind you that the main purpose of this seminar is to give you some tools to understand the flow of Srimad-Bhagavatam. I am not describing the details of different leelas of Srimad-Bhagavatam because the scope of this seminar would not allow this, but I would like to give the certain conceptual framework, and having this conceptual framework as a tool to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will be able to better understand what is the general message of Shukadev Goswami to all of us, and we will ultimately, and that's the main purpose of what I'm saying, be able to apply this better in our life. Because Srimad-Bhagavatam is a practical book. It's a book which requires practical application to our life in many different angles and areas of our life. And of course, the very important area of the application of this book is hearing the pastimes of Krishna and becoming empowered by these pastimes. Changing our consciousness and our heart through this process of hearing Krishna Katha. And for that we need certain frame of mind. We have to really be eager to absorb what is there in Srimad-Bhagavatam, and that was basically the message which I was trying to convey last time when we started this analysis of the 10th canto. I said that to understand the 10th canto, you need, and the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam, but specifically 10th canto, to understand, to see the pastimes of Krishna in the spiritual world, you need to be in samadhi. And to be in samadhi, to be completely absorbed in the hearing of Srimad-Bhagavatam, we have to really understand how important this message is and what this message is all about. So basically that's little introduction, and I will today introduce a very important verse from the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we spoke probably a couple of times during this seminar. And this verse is very important because it explains, as I said last time, the specialty of Gaudiya Sampradaya, the special approach to Srimad-Bhagavatam, and especially to the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So that's the famous verse from the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Ati Cham Shakalach Pumsach Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Ridayanti Yuge Yuge. So that's the verse which gives us the main tool. That's this verse is our main tool how to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam, and especially the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and why it's so important. And I will, in the course of this lecture, will explain more why this concept that Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, whereas everyone else is his amshas and kalas, different parts and parts of the parts, why it is so important to be fixed in this understanding. Anyway, without much ado, as Rasakrida usually says. Let's read the verse. Eticham shakalah pumsah Krishna stu bhagavan svayam indrari vyakulam lokam mridayanti yuge yuge. Let's read the translation, word by word translation by Srila Prabhupada. Ete, all these, cha and amsha, plenary portions, kalaha, portions of the plenary portions, pumsaha, of the Supreme, Krishnaha, Lord Krishna, too, but, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Svayam, in person, Indra Ari, the enemies of Indra, Vyakulam, disturbed, Lokam, all the planets, Mridayanti, gives protection, Yuge Yuge, in different ages. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. All the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord, but Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by the atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. The purport is very long, so I will read the second part of the purport, which is the most important for our discussion today. So all the different indirectly or directly empowered incarnations of the Lord manifested different features. But Lord Krishna, the primeval Lord, exhibited the complete features of Godhead, and thus it is confirmed that He is the source of all other incarnations. And the most extraordinary feature exhibited by Lord Sri Krishna was His internal energetic manifestation of His pastimes with the cowherd girls. His pastimes with the gopis are all displays of transcendental existence, bliss, and knowledge, although there are manifested, these are manifested apparently as sex love. The specific attraction of His pastimes with the gopis should never be misunderstood. The Bhagavatam relates these transcendental pastimes in the 10th canto. And in order to reach the position to understand the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, the Bhagavatam promotes the student gradually in the 9 other cantos. According to Srila Jiva Goswami's statement, in accordance with the authoritative sources, Lord Krishna is the source of all other incarnations. It is not that Lord Krishna has any source of incarnation. All the symptoms of the Supreme Truth in full are present in the person of Lord Sri Krishna. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord emphatically declares that there is no truth greater than or equal to Him. Matah parataram nanyat kinchit asti dhananjaya. In this stanza, the Lord Swayam is particularly mentioned to confirm that Lord Krishna has no other source than Himself. Although in other places the incarnations are described as Bhagavan because of their specific functions, nowhere are they declared to be the Supreme Personality. In this stanza, the word Swayam signifies the supremacy as the summum bonum. The summum bonum, Krishna, is one without second. He Himself has expanded Himself in various parts, portions, and particles as Swayam Rupa, Swayam Prakasha, Tadekatma, Prabhava, Vaibhava, Vilasa, Avatara, Avesha, and Jivas, all provided with innumerable energies just suitable to the respective persons and personalities. Learned scholars in transcendental subjects have carefully analyzed the summum bonum Krishna to have 64 principal attributes. All the expansions or categories of the Lord possess only some percentage of these attributes. But Sri Krishna is the possessor of the attributes 100%. And his personal expansions, such as Swayam Prakasha and Tadekatma, up to the categories of the avatars, who are all Vishnu Tattva, possess up to 93% of these transcendental attributes. Lord Shiva, who is neither avatara nor avesha, nor in between them, possesses almost 84% of the attributes, but the jivas, or the individual living beings in different statuses of life, possess up to the limit of 78% of the attributes. In the conditioned state of material existence, the living being possesses these attributes in very minute quantity, varying in terms of the pious life of the living being. The most perfect of living beings is Brahma, the supreme administrator of the universe. He possesses 78% of the attributes in full. All other demigods have the same attributes in less quantity, whereas human beings possess the attributes in very minute quantity. The standard of perfection for human being is to develop the attributes up to 78% in full. The living being can never possess attributes like Shiva, Vishnu, or Lord Krishna. All living being can become godly by developing 78% transcendental attributes in fullness, but he can never become a god like Shiva, Vishnu, or Krishna. He can become a Brahma in due course. The godly living beings, who are all residents of the planets of spiritual sky, are eternal associates of God in different spiritual planets called Haridhama or Maheshadhama. The abode of Lord Krishna above all spiritual planets called Krishnaloka or Goloka Vrindavana. And the perfect living being, by developing 78% of the above attributes in fullness, can enter the planet of Krishnaloka after leaving the present material body. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vanchakalpatarudescha Kripa Sindhubhe Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yantah pravishya mama vachim imam prasuptam sanjivayata kila shakti darasvadham nanyamscha hasta charana shravanat vagadim pranannamo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam svasyastu vishwasya kalach prasidatam dhyantu bhutani shivam mithodya manascha badram bhajata tadhokshache avesyatam no matir Apyahaitu ki. So we continue with our attempts to obtain the conceptual framework which would be proper for understanding the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the message of the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and the Srimad-Bhagavatam as a whole. And last lecture I was speaking that actually Bhagavatam cannot be understood intellectually. That was the main point of our previous lecture. So the natural question at this point of our discussion would be, why do we need all this complicated intellectual analysis if Bhagavatam anyway cannot be understood intellectually? Are we not contradicting ourselves? Moreover, even after last lecture, somebody approached me, one brahmachari approached me and said, you said that Bhagavatam could not be understood intellectually, but then after that you gave highly technical analysis of the different features of Srimad-Bhagavatam, although I didn't give technical analysis of the different features of Srimad-Bhagavatam, but for his perception it was very technical. So that's true. So how to reconcile this apparent contradiction? The apparent contradiction is reconciled in a very simple way. We need this analysis of Srimad-Bhagavatam to be able to concentrate fully on the worship of Sri Krishna as the highest manifestation of the absolute truth. This absorption about which I was talking last time is not possible if we don't have very clear understanding that this is the most important and the highest manifestation of the absolute truth is Lord Krishna. Otherwise, our mind will be split into many different branches and we will try to pursue this goal and that goal. Unless we understand that Sri Krishna is the highest goal and there is nothing higher, and there is nothing more important than Sri Krishna, it will be very difficult for us to really concentrate on this with complete conviction. The doubts will always erode our conviction. We will try to concentrate. We know this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But then some genius idea comes to our mind. Why don't I do something else? Why don't I engage in something more worthwhile, more useful? Of course, because we are supposed to be devotees, we are followers of Srila Prabhupada, we somehow or other sit. But then every now and then, regularly, every split second, the genius ideas pop out in our mind. You can do this, you can do that, or you can do something else. So what is this ideas? These ideas is the lack of conviction. Because if the mind would be 100% convinced that this is the most important thing which I am doing, which I could be doing, there's nothing more important. This will give me the highest possible result. This will give me the highest possible experience of bliss, which we all hanker about. All these ideas will be silent. The mind would become silent as it is silent in case of great devotees. The great devotees, they don't have these genius ideas. Somehow or other, they lack this genius feature of their mind. They are concentrated on something. So, again, as I said, yes, we have to be concentrated on Srimad-Bhagavatam, on the holy name, but for that, we need the proper intellectual understanding of Srimad-Bhagavatam, conceptual understanding of what Srimad-Bhagavatam is all about, which will help us to become absorbed in the chanting of the holy name, in studying Srimad-Bhagavatam, and not being distracted to all these different other things which we could do. Because there are so many ideas and so many different stuff. And then you may ask, but you were talking about parampara. What does it mean that we have to receive it through parampara? It means that we have to be very chaste to the specific line of disciplic succession which explains to us how Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. Because, as I said, many people recognize this, many people accept this. Yes, Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, but how he is Swayam Bhagavan, to which extent he is Swayam Bhagavan, people don't know. Like many people say, I believe in God. But what does it mean, I believe in God? it really means not so much. In many, many cases, yeah, there was somebody who was really bored and he created this world, and this world is so imperfect, and now he's trying to improve this world one way or another, and he created this evolutionary process to improve this world, or something like this. You know, these people don't understand what does it mean Swayam Bhagavan, what is the concept of Swayam Bhagavan. So first we have to understand who is Swayam Bhagavan, that this is Krishna, and then we have to understand how Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, what is the scope of his Bhagavata, of his divine nature, what is the scope of his energy, of the magnitude of his personality, and so on and so forth. So this is all very necessary, and to understand it properly, we have to receive this knowledge through parampara, through our specific parampara, Gaudiya Vaishnava parampara, because nowhere the glories of Bhagavan is proclaimed and announced so clearly and so amazingly. So again, this all we have to understand before we really understand the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, especially the main pastime of the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is Rasa Lila. Srila Prabhupada explains this, that to understand this one Rasa Lila, the whole Srimad-Bhagavatam is written for us to understand Rasa Lila. There's nothing else. Everything else is just it's the main dish of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Like when we get, proper South Indian dish, there will be, many, many different preparations with small quantity. But then there will be rice. So rice is the main dish. Everything else is just to digest this rice properly, or the grain properly. So in the same way, these 5 chapters of the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is the main dish. But there is a lot of different preparations in the Srimad-Bhagavatam so that we could digest these 5 chapters of Rasa Lila in Srimad-Bhagavatam. And by digesting these 5 chapters of Rasa Lila in the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, be transferred into the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada explains that ultimately we will be able to enter into Goloka Vrindavana, the highest planet of spiritual world, if we become 100% pure, and if we develop the full potential which is there in the Jiva, 78% of the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as Prabhupada explains. Not before that. So, but Prabhupada himself says it's difficult to digest this main dish of Srimad-Bhagavatam, seemingly easy and described there by Shukadev Goswami, but it's difficult to digest, because it looks like mundane sex life. And we will not be able to understand the inner meaning or experience the inner meaning of this 5 chapters of the 10th canto, to experience the full rasa of these 5 chapters, to develop this full rasa while reading the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, unless we understand previous 9 cantos, and unless we understand this particular verse, which is the main sutra to understand the whole message of Srimad-Bhagavatam. And we were speaking about Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Chaitanya was there, and he came with this message. I was talking last lecture that was the specific purpose of Lord Chaitanya's appearance in this world, is to explain Srimad-Bhagavatam. Is to explain Srimad-Bhagavatam, which was not understood, which was misunderstood by all the previous acharyas. Not really misunderstood, but kind of, the main point of Srimad-Bhagavatam was to a greater extent missed by other commentators of Srimad-Bhagavatam, by other great scholars and great devotees, or it was not so clearly presented as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu presented himself. And for those lucky souls who were present during Lord Chaitanya's direct incarnation, for them there was hardly any need to listen Srimad Bhagavatam, even though Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was explaining Srimad Bhagavatam during his manifest pastimes. But for them, the main proof was the personality of Lord Chaitanya himself. They would see Lord Chaitanya, they would see his beauty, they would see his ecstatic manifestations, and the reflection of his very strong emotions would be manifested within their heart. And for them, that was the proof that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They didn't need any other proof. Like there is a beautiful pastime in Madhya Lila of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya is traveling throughout Indian subcontinent to South India, and in one place he meets with one devotee, and this devotee invites him for lunch, and this devotee always chants Ram, 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 constantly, non-stop, Ram, 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 Ram. So he invites Lord Chaitanya to his home, he feeds Lord Chaitanya accepts his meal, he's very pleased with his hospitality, and then Lord Chaitanya goes somewhere else nearby to some holy place, and then he returns to the same place, and he meets with the same Brahmana, and again this Brahmana invites him for lunch. And to great surprise of Lord Chaitanya, this time this Brahmana chants Krishna, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And Lord Chaitanya, he somewhat surprisingly asking him, my dear Brahmana, last time when I was visiting you, you were chanting Ram, 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 Ram. What happened with you? Why are you chanting Krishna, Krishna, Krishna now? And then this Brahmana, he explains his story. He says, from my childhood, I was actually attached to collecting different names of the Lord. Like now, people they're collecting, they have some hobby, they're collecting postal marks or something like this. So, postal stamps. But he was collecting the names of the Lord, and he was collecting actually the explanation, the different meanings of different names of the Lord, and he was happily engaged in this meditation on the qualities of the Supreme Lord. He said, but out of all the names of the Lord, the name of Lord Ram was attracting me the most. And therefore, ultimately, I became very much attracted to this particular name, and I was chanting Ram, Ram, Ram. And I knew the name of Krishna. From Mahabharata, I knew the definition of name of Krishna. Krishi Bhuvachakam Shabdon Nastu Nivriti Vachakam. That the name of Lord Krishna consists of two roots, Krish and Na, which denotes the existence full of bliss, blissful existence, the highest bliss possible in the existence. So I knew the name of Krishna, but nevertheless, the name of Lord Ram attracted me more, and therefore I was chanting Ram, 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 Ram all the time. But since I saw you, somehow or other, some miracle happened in my life. I cannot chant Lord Ram's name anymore. I only chant Krishna. So what is the essence, what is the meaning of this little pastime from Chaitanya Charitamrita is that for those lucky souls who were contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, there was no need to prove that Krishna is the supreme manifestation of the Supreme Lord. Just by seeing him, they would get this idea. Just by hearing the names of the Lord emanating from his lips when Lord Chaitanya was traveling and he was chanting Krishna, 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 Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava Rakshaman, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava Pahimam. When they would hear this, that was the proof. That was pratyaksha praman. By pratyaksha, by their experiential, subjective experience of these names of Krishna, they would understand this is the highest. And after that, it was very easy for them to concentrate on this. But unfortunately, it's not the case with us. And therefore, we need to be convinced that this is the highest, that this is nothing more higher than this. And for us to understand this, Goswamis of Vrindavana, who were convinced completely because they seen Lord Chaitanya in person, but for us, they wrote all this literature, and the primary purpose of writing this literature is to help us to concentrate on this practice of the chanting of the holy name and studying Srimad-Bhagavatam. They gave us the philosophical background, and that's called Sambandha Gyan. Our Tattvacharya Srila Jiva Goswami wrote 6 Sandarbhas. Srila Rupa Goswami wrote Lagu Bhagavatamrita, which is his presentation of Sambandha Gyan or Tattva. So otherwise, what will happen when we try to concentrate on the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam or any verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam, when we try to concentrate on the holy name, some distraction will come to our mind, and this distraction will distract us. As a bonus, my main purpose today is to speak about this Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam verse, but I wanted also today to explain for our benefit, for my own benefit, and perhaps a benefit of those who hear me, one sutra from Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. Very, very important sutra which, if we understand it properly, may change our life and may change our practice completely. Very important sutra. This is the 30th sutra of the first part, first chapter of the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali Muni. Very important. Vyadhi sthana samshaya pramada alasya avirati Branti darshana, alabha bhumikatva, anavasthitatva, chitavikshepa te antarayaha. Te antarayaha. Very important. So, if we meditate on this sutra, we will recognize ourselves. Because in this sutra, there is a list of 9 impediments to samadhi, 9 impediments to complete concentration on the spiritual practice. And these 9 impediments, they are listed in a particular order, from the grossest one to the most subtle one. And besides that, there is a very nice, interesting point in the sutra, which I will explain a little later after explaining these 9 impediments. So it is said specifically that there is 9 distractions which come to us, and these 9 distractions, they are obstacles which we naturally encounter on our path to samadhi, on our path to concentration, on our journey to the Supreme Lord. So this is the distractions. Here's the list of distractions. All the attention of our mind goes to this. Either we in complete panic and we try to meditate, what should I do, which doctor should I approach, which clinic I should go, which analysis I should do, or we just cannot think about anything else but this pain in our body. That's very debilitating. The disease is not such a problem, but the psychological effect of the disease is much greater problem. every one of us experienced. I had this COVID disease a few months ago. And when I had this COVID, I couldn't think about anything else. I was just completely absorbed in this disease. I was in samadhi, vyadhi samadhi, samadhi on the disease. You can only be, it's completely distracts your attention. You try to chant the holy name, but the holy name, you're always distracted by this. This is the grossest, because the slightest discomfort in the body distracts our mind. It's a fact. We have to recognize this. There is nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong in the sense that it's natural. This is how we are, created. This is how we are created, unfortunately. So the next point is sthana. Sthana in Sanskrit means thickness. Something which is really thick and sticky. Like you take some glue. It's thick and sticky. Sthana means this condition of your body when you're not really sick, but when you're really, but you're really thick. You're really sticky. You're just oh my goodness. And we all know, we all experience this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. and you become completely immersed into this tamasic state of consciousness. We all know this, we're doing something nice, and then all of a sudden this tamas comes. This is sthana, and you are like, you feel like you're stuck in some mud, in some martial area where there is just mud, and you're being absorbed into this mud. So this is sthana, and this is, of course, this condition of the mind where you cannot really chant, because the chanting of one round may take you 2 hours. Sometimes I've seen this in the example of some devotees, and sometimes, when you're in this condition, even 1 hour, one round takes so long, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So that's vikshepa, that's the distraction, and that's only the second one. The third one is samshaya. Samshaya means, of course, doubt, and samshaya means undecisiveness. Samshaya means whether I should do this or I should do something else. Should I be doing this now? It's such a nice time of the day. I can chant later. I can chant at night. Now I have to, run and do something, and this is important. And this doubt, which actually deprives you of this concentration. The mind always says, why don't you do this? Or why don't you do that? And you think, yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do something else. So that's doubt, samshaya. Then pramada. Pramada, of course, we know, inattentiveness. Or pramada means also negligence. We are doing Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But the mind is busy doing some other things. You're doing this. You said, okay, fine, I agree, 16 rounds. But at the same time, pramada, you're completely distracted from this. Pramada means complete distractiveness, complete carelessness. You don't care. You don't care about the holy name because you're busy with something else. That's the fourth. The fifth is alasya. Alasya means just laziness, You're maybe not distracted, but just you're lazy. You just not attracted to this process. You just, lazy. And again, that may take so long, for chanting one round. Then avirati. Avirati means you are attracted to something else. Avirati means you're craving. You're chanting the the holy name, and then some impetus inside you says, oh, you should eat something now. It's a good idea. You're hungry. Let's eat something and then I will chant. Or let's read Srimad-Bhagavatam. We are reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, and then we say, no, just little, cup of herbal tea. It's not bad tea. It's just herbal tea with little cookie. Would be nice, Or some other craving is coming to your mind. I want to do this. I want to do that. That's avirati. Basically, again, means the distraction, because you're not attached to the process which you're doing. And then three more. Bhranti darshana. Oh, that's beautiful. Bhranti darshana means the wrong ideas or wrong visions which you have. Either you entertain some wrong philosophy. Bhranti darshana may mean wrong philosophy. You chant the holy name and you have completely wrong understanding of what is the purpose of this process, of what you have to achieve. Bhranti darshana may mean, yes, I chant this holy name because I want to become healthy. And therefore I'm chanting the holy name, let's become healthy. or complete misunderstanding of the purpose and the reason why you're doing this, and what is the end result of it. Or you chant and you say, okay, right, I will chant, but because I want liberation, and this holy name will give me liberation. Or Bhranti darshana may mean you may have some vision, some mystical vision, or this is Krishna. Or you imagine something. Bhranti darshana basically means that you start imagining because you're bored, and you start imagining Krishna's pastimes willfully. If it comes on its own accord, there's nothing wrong. But if you try to, oh yeah, I'm Krishna and I'm doing this. No, I'm a gopi, and I'm cooking for Krishna. Let's cook for Krishna something. This is Bhranti darshana. This is all wrong. This is all distractions in our mind. This is all strange ideas. So sometimes, we start imagining how great we are. We concentrated 3 names of Krishna. We pronounce with concentration, and immediately the mind goes to say, oh, how great you are. You must be a pure devotee. Nobody yet recognizes this. You must be a gopi in Vrindavana. You chanted so nicely. And then the rest of the rounds you chant with this idea, Bhranti darshana, I am the pure devotee. Congratulations. So, and then alabha bhumikatva means that you cannot really achieve the stage of practices. You struggle and struggle and struggle, and you always go back. You struggle with some distraction, and then you overcome this instruction, and then you again go back. You cannot really reach certain platform. Like in our case, we may struggle and try hard to reach Nishta, but we cannot reach Nishta. Why? Because we are distracted from this. Because, and we always say, okay, today it didn't work, tomorrow it will work, and tomorrow it will not work. And then we say, yes, tomorrow it will work, next week it will work, next month it will work. When I become retired, it will work. It will never work. Because if it doesn't work today, why should it work tomorrow? You are distracted from your determination to reach certain stage. If you chant, you have to chant with this determination. I have to reach this state by all means. Today, not tomorrow. Today I have to chant with nishta, with concentration. And then it will give you something. And then the last impediment, or the last distraction rather, not impediment. It's not impediments, it's the list of distractions. Anavasthitatva. Anavasthitatva means Even if we reach some stage, we cannot stay on this stage, we go down. Sometimes it happens for some time we chant 64 rounds and we're happy and everything else, but then inevitably after some time we go down. 16 rounds is enough, no problem. So this is anavastita. We cannot really maintain the same level of intensity of our practice. That's all the list of vikshepas, from the grossest one, a list of distractions, from the grossest one to the most subtle one. So these vikshepas come while we are engaged in spiritual practice, like chanting of the holy name or reading Srimad-Bhagavatam. But this sutra has a little secret, which actually the main reason why I wanted to describe or explain this sutra in detail. This little secret is that it is said, all this, the list of these 9 distractions is there, and it is said, Chitta Vikshepa Te. These are Chitta Vikshepa, the distractions of our chitta, the natural forces which distract us. Antarayaha. And then it is said, these distractions become obstacle. So the intended meaning of this sutra is that these distractions may become obstacle, may not become obstacle. The distractions will be there because that's the stage of our mind, this is the level we are in. Everyone experiences this. But even though the distraction will be there, they may become obstacle, may not become obstacle, depending on how we react on these distractions. If we take these distractions seriously, if we go for it, if we really identify with the mind and we say, yes, yes, I'll do this, yes, very good idea, then it becomes obstacle. If we see this distraction in the mind and we say, my dear mind, everything is fine, I am busy chanting the holy name, and we don't pay too much attention to all these distractions, then these distractions, even though they're there, they will not become obstacles. So what I want to say is that this theory which I'm about to describe, this philosophy is supposed to create such a strong faith that we will be able, ultimately, facing all these distractions, say to them that I'm not going for you. I'm still, despite the distracted nature of my mind, I'm still following this path. I will repeat it again. Why the Acharyas, why Goswamis of Vrindavan, why Srila Prabhupada ultimately wrote all these books, these all writings, is for us to be completely convinced that this is the most important thing which we should do, and when the distraction come to our mind, and it will come to our mind sooner or later, rather sooner than later, we will not be distracted by this distraction. The distraction will be there, but we don't have to be distracted by the distraction. We still can be determined to pursue this path. So that's the intention, that's the point which I want to make. And that's why I'm explaining, I'm planning to explain in great detail, following Srila Jiva Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the purport of this verse, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. So that when some distraction in the form of doubt, in the form of laziness, in the form of inattentiveness will come, we will be able to deal properly with this distraction and not be distracted by the distraction. So that's the main idea behind this class. And therefore, in the next sutra, it is said that Ekatattva Abhyas. how to overcome these distractions, eka tattva abhyas, to be repeatedly abhyas, to train our mind to concentrate on eka tattva, on one tattva. So that's the only way to overcome all the distractions, including disease. Even in the grossest type of distraction, when we are diseased, we don't have to be distracted. We still can be concentrated if we train ourselves. And the proof of this is Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was so sick, was completely sick. It's painful even to watch this, the condition of his body. I cannot really watch it because it's too painful to see in which condition he is. Was he distracted? No, he was not. Why? Because of eka tattva abhyas, because during his lifetime he was practicing again and again and again to concentrate his mind on this eka tattva. There is only one truth, there is only one highest truth. This one highest truth is Krishna himself. Who is this Krishna? Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, not just Bhagavan, Swayam Bhagavan. Bhagavan himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we are completely convinced, then we will be able to do this abhyas, and it means that all these distractions will not affect us, will not really distract our consciousness, and then we will enter Goloka Vrindavana, as Prabhupada explains in this purport, in a very natural way. So therefore this is why we need Sambandha Gyan. You know, somebody may say, why such an elaborate description of Sambandha Gyan of philosophy? Why not describe the details? I can understand why we're describing the details of Abhideya, of the process. You know, as I now describe how we should chant. You know, that's practical. Sometimes devotees think that this is very theoretical, all this philosophy. You know, to explain the details about the prayojana, where we should reach ultimately, what is our goal, is also practical, because in this way we will be able to concentrate on the goal. No, but the Sambandha is also very practical, it's not theory. Because how it is practical? It's practical because it helps us to concentrate the mind, and it helps us to train our mind to concentrate on this. And this is called Shastriya Shraddha. You know, first we have to develop very strong Shastriya Shraddha and not be happy, not be satisfied with the level of Shraddha which we have. We all have some Shraddha, but in most cases it's to a greater extent, not Shastriya Shraddha, but Lokika Shraddha. Lokika Shraddha, I'm doing this because everyone else is doing this, because I like the society of devotees, because there are so many rumors about some miracles. You know, Lokika Shraddha, the best way to create Lokika Shraddha in audience is to create some miracle. You know, you create miracle and then you say, now believe what I say. You know, but this is cheap faith. And therefore, it's interesting. I personally don't know any miracle connected with Srila Jiva Goswami. Does it mean that he was not a mystic of the highest order? He was. But our Goswamis, they are very conservative, including Srila Prabhupada, in showing the miracles. You know, of course, the followers, we as followers always are prone and happy to describe different miracles. You know, I've heard so many miracles, you know, in ISKCON. This, my Guru Maharaj, he did this miracle, and my Guru Maharaj, he did bigger miracle. This is all useless. This is all attempts to create, to fortify Shraddha when it's very weak, to kind of compensate Shraddha when there is no proper Shraddha. So how to create the proper Shraddha? The proper Shraddha should be created by studying Srimad-Bhagavatam and again and again and again. Then it will be proper Shraddha. But again, just one little more thing which I want to say before we go into the description of this verse. You know, when you have Lokika Shraddha, those people who have very strong Lokika Shraddha, conventional Shraddha, they become fanatics. You know, and why very often ISKCON devotees are fanatics? Because of this reason. Fanaticism is the natural outcome of Lokika Shraddha, of this conventional superstitious Shraddha. This is not real belief, but superstition. And people become fanatics. People who have bookish knowledge, and I'm not talking about bookish knowledge, please understand me properly. People who have bookish knowledge, who have just intellectual knowledge, and who are proud of their intellectual knowledge, they become dogmatics. If you have Lokika Shraddha, you become fanatic. If you have just theoretical knowledge, you become dogmatic. You will just proclaim your dogma again and again and again. You know, none of them are correct. You know, to develop the proper faith, we also have to invoke certain emotions. Only when the taste is there, when there is pure understanding of the scriptures combined with the taste, this combination will give you the proper type of Shraddha, of faith. And this Shraddha will help you to develop very nicely in the spiritual life. This Shraddha will ultimately bring you to the point of Raganuga sadhana, of the spontaneous devotional service. Whereas, you know, the bookish knowledge will give you mechanical following of the rules and regulations. That's it. So it's very important for us to be in this path of bhava. Actually, it's very interesting. Again, little distraction from the main topic. The whole path which we are following, the path of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's called Bhava Marg. It's the path of sacred, divinely inspired emotions. Therefore, it's called Bhava Marg. It's not Vidhi Marg. We are not following Vidhi Bhakti. Even in the beginning stages, we are following Bhava Marg because we are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't bring Vidhi Bhakti, Vaidhi Bhakti. He brought this Bhava Marg, the path of emotions. And this, that to achieve this stage, we one second. We ultimately have, we should remember that we are following this path and we are following Vidhi to actually invoke Bhava. That we are not just following the rules and regulations for the sake of the rules and regulations, but we're following the rules and regulations to invoke the emotional connection with the Lord, to invoke emotional connection with the Holy Name, to invoke emotional connection with the associates of the Lord in Vrindavan. But we're going through the intellect. Please understand that there is two paths. You know, these two paths, and we are now going directly to the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam. The very beginning of the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam describes two different processes by the means of stories how to obtain Krishna. One process was employed by Vasudeva, and it is explained in the 10th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam in the very beginning how Krishna came to Vasudeva. Krishna first entered the mind of Vasudeva in the prison cell of Kamsa. And what is prison cell of Kamsa? I explained in one of the lectures that prison cell of Kamsa is this symbolically these rules and regulations of the scriptures. He regulated his life, he restricted his life. This is the prison cell. And first, in this case, he comes to his mind. But then from his mind, he goes where? He goes to his heart. It's very important. He doesn't remain in his mind. Krishna first goes to heart, goes to mind, to intelligence, and then from the intelligence goes into heart, and then from the heart it goes to Devaki, and Devaki ultimately conceives Krishna. So, but in case of Nanda Maharaj, the process is different. In case of Nanda Maharaj, he first loved Krishna. Krishna first entered his heart, and then he entered his mind. Both of them, they were thinking about Krishna. But in case of Nanda Maharaj, Krishna first entered the heart and then entered his intelligence or mind. In case of Vasudeva Maharaj, it's a different process. So we are mostly following this process of Vasudeva Maharaj. But we should not forget that ultimately Krishna has to come to our heart. We have to get emotional attachment to Krishna. And therefore, intellectually, we should not be lazy. We should try to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And when we understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, Krishna is the highest. And if Krishna is the highest, then his dham relation, his abode is the highest. That is Vrindavan. If his abode is the highest and Krishna is the highest, his associates in Vrindavan are the highest. So what I want to say is that, and Krishna ideally reciprocates with our mood. We will be able to understand the main message of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is rasa, or relationship with Krishna, especially in the 10th canto, if we understand that there is nothing higher than Krishna himself. So that's the foundation. Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam is foundation for everything. Foundation for Bhava Marg, foundation for achieving rasa, foundation for entering Vrindavan, foundation for practicing Raganuga sadhana. All this very logical and very beautiful conclusions which are coming from this little phrase, Ete chamsha kalah pumsah Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. And if we understand this little phrase, half of the line, half of the shloka properly, then everything else will naturally follow, effortlessly follow. Therefore, a bigger part of Krishna Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami wrote first Tattva Sandarbha, then he wrote Bhagavata Sandarbha, then he wrote Paramatma Sandarbha, where he explained Brahman, he explained Paramatma, he explained Bhagavan, he explained the energies of Paramatma, he explained this world, he explained everything. What is the need to write the next Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha? Because Krishna is a very special form of Bhagavan. He is Swayam Bhagavan. He is not just Bhagavan. Bhagavat Sandarbha is explaining the nature of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Krishna Sandarbha is explaining the nature of special form of Bhagavan, which is Krishna, which is the highest form of Bhagavan. He is not any Bhagavan, any other form of Bhagavan. He is the source of all other forms of Bhagavan. He is the source of other forms of Bhagavan, and he himself doesn't have any source. And this is Krishna, and this is the statement of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the key statement to Srimad-Bhagavatam to explain any other stories. So, and that's our topic today, and I spent 1 hour, almost 1 hour and 10 minutes to give this introduction to this topic, but I think it was important. So, yeah, a little more. Yeah, I want to reiterate a little more. So unless we understand this statement, we will never be able to understand who is Krishna, that Krishna is the embodiment of all rasas. We will never be able to understand the gradation of the rasas. What are the taratamya, or the hierarchical gradation of the rasas. And we will not be able to understand that Krishna has his own planets, because many Vaishnavas who are not followers Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they don't believe that there is a special planet of Krishna Loka. They say that, it's not mentioned anywhere. It's mentioned in Pancharatra literature. It's mentioned. The special yantras of meditating on Galoka Vrindavana is described in details. Brahma Samhita is there, but they don't believe. They say Vaikuntha. They don't understand. They don't understand the inner gradations within Krishna Loka, which we will describe later. They don't understand why Gokul is higher than Goloka, why Vrindavan is higher than Gokula, why Govardhan is higher than Vrindavan, why Radhakunda is higher than anything else. Because they don't understand this idea of gradation and the fullest manifestation of God, that even though He is Bhagavan in all his manifestations, and they're all equal, they're all one. Nevertheless, there is some difference, and how this difference manifests, they don't understand. And sometimes they say Krishna is Paramatma, sometimes they say, yes, Dwarakadish Krishna, Rukmini Krishna is there, and Radha Krishna is there, and Krishna in Madhura is there, and for them it's all the same. It's not the same. So, to really follow the path which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought, we have to understand this half of the verse from the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. And if we understand this very easily, everything will follow. So the first point which Srila Jiva Goswami explains, and not only Srila Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the commentary of this verse, he is asking, what is the meaning of the statement, Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam? Well, ete chamsha kalach pumsach. Ete means all this, which described before. In the third chapter of the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is called Guhya Janma Dhyaya. The Adhyaya, or the chapter which describes Guhya Janma, the confidential birth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And 22 different incarnations of the Lord, 22 different avatars of the Lord, starting with Kumaras, are being described there. Varahadev and Narada Muni and so many others, Parashuram, Ramachandra, Vyasadev, all these different incarnations have been described. And then Sutta Goswami, in the conclusion of this, he says, Ete cha amsha kala pumsach. All these are either amsha, plenary portions as Prabhupada translates, or kalas, portions of plenary portions. Ete chamsha kalach pumsach, Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. So all these are amshas and kalas, and in one of the next lectures we will describe in details all different gradations and different manifestations of Bhagavan. Let's not touch this subject matter now. Let's get to our main business. And therefore we didn't read the first part of the purport where Prabhupada explains different manifestations. Ete chamsha kala pumsa, ete cha amsha kala and pumsa of the Purushi. So what does it mean? But, he says, tu, Krishna's tu, Bhagavan Swayam. So the question here, is it Bhagavan who is Krishna, or is it Krishna who is Bhagavan? What is proper, what is the message here in this verse? Because ultimately both of these words in Sanskrit, they in Prathama Vibhakti, in nominative case. Krishna is in nominative case, and Bhagavan is in nominative case. So it could be Bhagavan is Krishna, or Krishna is Bhagavan. For us, this question seems to be theoretical, seems to be not very relevant. It's extremely relevant question. Because if we say that the intention of Sutta Goswami to say Krishna, Bhagavan is Krishna, if let's say we imagine that he wants to say Bhagavan is Krishna, then basically it means that there is a Bhagavan and now he is Krishna, but in some other case Bhagavan is Narasimha, Bhagavan is Rama, Bhagavan is Parashuram, Bhagavan is Matsya. It's all Bhagavan, and now he says Krishna is Bhagavan is Krishna. So there is Bhagavan, and then so many other forms of Bhagavan can be listed. Krishna is one of them. But here he says, no. His message, intended message here is that Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. It is Krishna who is Bhagavan. Why? Srila Jiva Goswami explains. He says that there is this subject and predicate. Subject is something which we already know, something which we heard, and predicate is statement in the sentence which says something new about the subject. Let's say you're talking about some nice boy who is named Govinda. And you're talking about Govinda, and then he says Govinda is very intelligent. So then Govinda is subject, because you have already heard about Govinda, and then you giving some other additional information about Govinda, and you say he is intelligent. Let's say if you didn't talk about Govinda, and all of a sudden you say Govinda is very intelligent, and you don't know who's Govinda, which Govinda you mean, this sentence doesn't make any sense. The sentence Govinda is intelligent only makes sense if Govinda is mentioned before, and then you add some additional information, and then it makes sense. Yeah, now I know about Govinda, and now you're talking that he has specific feature of his intelligence, and everything is clear. So Srila Jiva Goswami says Krishna is already mentioned before in the list of avatars. He is already mentioned there together with Balaram, and then Buddha and Kalki were there mentioned after that. He's number 19 in the list, and therefore he says Ete Chamsha Kalak Pumsach, all these others which I talked about, they either Amsha or Kalas. But Krishna, whom I already mentioned, is Bhagavan, is Swayam Bhagavan. So he is giving an additional information about Krishna who is mentioned, and that basically means, and two also emphasize this, it's only Krishna who is Swayam Bhagavan. The word two, which distinguishes Krishna from everyone else, and the specific grammatical structure of this sentence and the context of this sentence shows exclusively that all others, they're just parts and parts of the parts of Bhagavan, but Swayam Bhagavan, as Prabhupada says, the highest form of Bhagavan, Swayam Bhagavan, is Krishna. He is the source of all the avatars. Moreover, he is the source of the avatars, who is Purusha. That we will touch a little later. So for now, we have to really understand the grammatical structure of this sentence. Yes, Krishna is the subject, Bhagavan is predicate. It's a new information about Bhagavan, and then everything makes sense. So the followers of some other sampradayas, Actually, this is the explanation of Srila Sridhar Swami. Srila Sridhar Swami in his Bhavarta Deepika, he is also of the same opinion, and he repeats and quotes this statement, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swami, ete cham shakalak pumsa, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swami, many times in his Bhavarta Deepika, while explaining different episodes, especially from the 10th canto, so that we understand this is Swayam Bhagavan. But in other sampradayas, they don't agree with this. They say Narayana is Swayam Bhagavan. How do they explain this statement, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam? They say Krishna doesn't mean Krishna here. Krishna means somebody who attracts everything within himself. It means Narayana. During Pralaya, when the whole material world is destroyed, Narayana, everything enters into the body of Narayana. Therefore, when it is said Krishna, it doesn't mean Krishna. It doesn't mean it means Narayana here. But no. But Narayana is not mentioned here. Narayana, all of a sudden to say Narayana is the Swayam Bhagavan, it doesn't make any sense. And moreover, Srila Jiva Goswami, he notices very minutely, this whole analysis is based on a very minute analysis, linguistic analysis of Srimad-Bhagavatam, different statements of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Sometimes it's difficult to understand because it implies knowledge of Sanskrit grammar, and therefore it's somewhat important. So he says that while listing all these avatars in the previous verses, Srila Sutta Goswami doesn't name any one of them Bhagavan. Only when he listed Krishna and Balaram, he says, they're Bhagavan. And here again he says, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. So it fits very nicely. Just a few verses before, he already said that Krishna is Bhagavan, and now he's re-emphasizing this according to the context that it's only Krishna who is Swayam Bhagavan. Everyone else is just his Amsha and Kala and Vibhuti and all other lesser incarnations which are there. So that's the first important point. And when you will be asked in the future, what is more correct way to say? Krishna is Bhagavan or Bhagavan is Krishna? You please say Krishna is Bhagavan is more correct way to say. This is important to understand. So now the next question comes. Please listen very carefully. The next question comes, the objection comes. My dear sir, why you're saying it completely out of context? You know, all of a sudden you were listening, you were naming all these different avatars, explaining different pastimes of these avatars, and now out of blue, you're saying Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. You know, no, this is not correct, because Krishna, first of all, Krishna is already listed among the avatars. And it's just, you know, he just likes Krishna, and therefore he mentions Krishna here. So according to the context, we have to say that, no, it's not the intention of Sutta Goswami to distinguish Krishna. His intention is to list him among all other avatars of the Supreme Lord, who is Narayana. Correct? Isn't it? According to context, this is what it is talking about. So please listen very carefully. It's very, very important, because sometimes we may be bewildered when we speak with other people. Like there was very great Madhava scholar, B.N.K. Sharma, very beautiful person and very scholarly person who translated into English many Madhava's works, many Upanishads. And he wrote the whole essay in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita against this concept of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, against this concept of Gaudiya. And he specifically says, no, Krishna is listed among avatars. It's an artificial explanation. You're explaining something, it's not correct, it's not the intention of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's strained explanation. Sometimes we may also feel like this, and that means that we will not be concentrated on Krishna. It means that we will be distracted sooner or later. It means that some samshaya, some doubts will creep in our mind. So please listen how Srila Jiva Goswami answers this doubt. He says that according to Jaimini Sutras, and Jaimini Sutras in Purva Mimamsa are famous for formulating the rules of hermeneutics. The rules of hermeneutics are extremely important for us to understand because they explain how to understand the difficult, how to reconcile different statements in the Vedic literature. You know, it's a very practical thing because oftentimes devotees in ISKCON, they fight with each other because somebody says, Prabhupada said this, and somebody else says this. No, Prabhupada said this. So, and sometimes it's a completely irreconcilable, seemingly, apparently irreconcilable statements. And they will never be able to come in terms with each other because they don't know the rules of hermeneutics. To understand different statements, we have to really know what is called, according to hermeneutics, bala bal vichar. We have to understand which statement is stronger than another statement. If statements are contradictory, we have to do this bala bal vichar and analyze which statement carries more weight, and then take this statement as the main statement and try to explain the contradictory statement in the light of this statement. So that's very important. Why it is important? Because why Jaimini did it in Jaimini Sutra, in Karma Mimamsa? Because Jaimini Sutras explain a very practical thing, how to perform sacrifice. And unfortunately, in the Vedic literature, in Samhitas, in Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, specifically Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and sometimes Samhitas, the rules to perform sacrifice are not explained in a very systematic order. Somewhere in one place it is said you do this, in some other place it is said you do this. And you really have to understand what you should do, and sometimes these statements are contradictory. You know, and it's such a complex procedure, and it should be done very exactly, unless you do everything exactly. Like it is said that in one place it may be said that, you know, to do the sacrifice properly, you have to bring woods for the sacrifice, either on a horse or on an ass. So, and you know, if you carry it yourself, the sacrifice will not work. You have to bring the Lord on the horse or on the ass, on the donkey, and bring all this wood to the sacrificial arena. But then the question being cast in this particular sacrifice, on whom I should bring the wood, especially it's a big sacrifice, a lot of food should be brought. Should I employ donkey or should I employ horse? So you have to find some other statement in some completely different place that for this sacrifice you have to use horse. Srila Jiva Goswami gives this particular example. Please don't fall asleep. It's important. So what I want to say is that the Karma Mimamsa is very practical by nature, and to understand all these little details, it's also very practical for us because depending on the understanding of these details, the Viniyoga, the application of these rules will be different. So basically we're talking about which statement is stronger. We have this statement, Krishna stu Bhagavan, ete chamsha kalach pumsa Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam, and then we have this contextual understanding that this is, the whole section is about Srimad-Bhagavatam, is about avatars. So it's basically the opposing party, Purvapakshan may say that, you are wrong in your interpretation because it's all about avatars. So Purvamimamsa very clearly says, if there is a statement which understood according to context, and if there is a direct statement, the direct statement according to Purvamimamsa called Shruti. Please don't misunderstand, it's not a question of Shruti statement, Shruti Vakyas from the Shruti scriptures. It's just independent statement which can be understood independently without any context. So this statement, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam, but Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, is independent. It doesn't need any help. It's clear in itself. If there is this clear, very clear statement, this clear statement carries more weight, and every other explanations has to be explained from the light of the Shruti. Mimamsa Sutra, they list five different kinds of statement. They say that there is, the first is Shruti, which is direct statement which does not depend on anything else, which can be understood in itself without any additional help of some other considerations. The second one is Linga. Linga means inferential signifier, inferential statement. Little later I will explain what it means, because we will have this. And then there is Vakya, the syntaxical connection, syntaxis. And then there is Prakarana. Prakarana means context. And there is Stana, the particular order of the words in the statement. And then ultimately Samakya, the name, the derivation of the name. I will explain it little later, the whole thing. But at this point, it's enough to say that according to Mimamsa Sutra, Shruti is strongest, then Linga, then next one, then there is Vakya, then Prakarana, then Stana, then Samakya. So Shruti is carries more weight than Prakarana. If you say that according to the context of this chapter, Krishna is avatara, not the source of avatars, we say, really sorry, you are wrong, because there is a direct statement, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. And context has to be explained in the light of this direct, independent statement, which doesn't need any other means of interpretation. So that's another thing, very important point which we have to understand, that this statement is Shruti Vakya. Shruti Vakya not in the sense that it's coming from the Vedas, Shruti Vakya in the sense that it's a very clear, direct and self-sufficient statement which is completely unambiguous. There is no ambiguity in understanding this particular statement. So, and then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, so how do we understand that this Krishna is mentioned among avatars? Because he mentioned number 19. He was mentioned there. So, okay, this is the direct statement. How you understand this statement that Krishna is among the avatars? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a very interesting explanation. He says, Mathura is also mentioned as the place in the earth. But we know Mathura is transcendental. But at the same time, there is Mathura in the earth, Vrindavan in the earth. So Krishna is mentioned among avatars because he plays the role of avatara. Srila Jiva Goswami says the same thing. He performs the function of avatara while coming in this earth. Therefore, he is mentioned as avatara, but he is Swayam Bhagavan. It's the same like saying that, let's say somebody is the president of the country, but somehow or other he wants to do the role of the foreign minister, like Prime Minister Modi in his first term. He reserved basically the portfolio of the foreign minister for himself, even though there was some foreign minister, but he, in the most important relationship, he was playing the role of the foreign minister. So he's playing the role of the foreign minister, but he is the prime minister. He is higher. In the same way, Krishna is playing role of avatar while coming on the earth, but he is much higher. He is Swayam Bhagavan. Therefore, he is mentioned there. So that's very important. And then he also says, listen, it's very interesting and very important for us to understand clearly. Please don't think it's theoretical. After listening this class, you have to just run to the world. I don't know if you should do it in Oman, but in any other place you may do it. And start running in the streets of the city and just crying, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is God himself. So that's the practical application, the Viniyoga of this statement. We have to be so inspired. This is the highest manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I'm completely convinced now. So Srila Jiva Goswami, he analyzes, and also no, I'm not sure about Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. But anyway, Srila Jiva Goswami, he says, it's very interesting. Ete chamsa kalah pumsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. He says, all this, amsha okala of pumsa. Who is pumsa? Pumsa in this verse is in genitive case, in Shashti Bhakti. So they all parts and parts of the parts of Pumsa, but Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. He says, in the first verse of this chapter, the same grammatical structure is applied. Listen, this grammatical structure in the first verse of this chapter, before the list started. Jagrihe paurusham rupam Bhagavan mahadadibhih Sambhutam Sodashakalam Aduloka Sambrikshaya. In the beginning, Bhagavan Jagrihe Paurusham Rupam. He accepted the form of Purusha. And then from this Purusha, all these avatars came. So in the beginning, Bhagavan, who is different, accepted the form of Purusha, who is Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, who is Narayana, from whom all the avatars comes, and from this Purusha, all the avatars comes, and then the list of the avatars follows. So Srila Jiva Goswami says it's very logical for a sane person who remembers what he said before, at the end of the long list of different avatars, to remind us what was there in the beginning. What was there in the beginning? In the beginning was Bhagavan. And this Bhagavan accepted the form of Purusha, and from this Purusha, many, many different parts, amshas and kalas came. And at the end he says, Ete chamsha kalach pumsach, all these are parts and parcels of this Purusha. He uses almost the same word, the word which is exactly synonymous in Sanskrit. Pumsaha means genitive of pumsah, puman. And then Purusha is the same word, personality. So there is Bhagavan. He accepts the form of Purusha. From Purusha, all these parts are coming. And then at the end, he says, all these parts of Purusha, but Bhagavan is Krishna. The same Bhagavan which I mentioned in the first verse of this chapter. So this Bhagavan, who accepted first the form of Purusha and who produced all these different parts and parcels, all these different avatars, who is this Bhagavan? He is Krishna. So sometimes devotees, ISKCON devotees say that Krishna is avatari. that there are different avatars. Krishna is the source of avatars. No, Krishna is not avatari. Krishna is the source. Krishna is avatari of the avatari. Avatari is Kshirodakashaya Vishnu. He is the source of avatars. Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the avatari of the avatari. He is the avatari, the source of Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, who produces all other avatars. So everything fits very nicely in this understanding, whereas any other attempts to understand this verse, they will ultimately fail. They will be strained. This understanding that all of a sudden Krishna, who is just mentioned in the as a 19th avatar, is somebody else, that this is some else name of God Narayana, because he attracts everything within himself. It's really not logical. This is logical. This is also logical according to context. Even though Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam doesn't need contextual explanation, but according to context, it also fits very nicely that this is the intention of Sutta, to distinguish Krishna as a very special form of Bhagavan, Swayam Bhagavan, not any other forms of Bhagavan which may be there. So, I hope you're still with me, even though it may sound little technical, but please, actually it's very interesting. So the next point, he says that ultimately he just wants to prove. Srila Jiva Goswami is proving then. Next point is that this statement, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam, Eti Chamsha Kalapupsa Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam, this whole statement is a Paribhasha Sutra. What is Paribhasha Sutra? Paribhasha Sutra, it's coming from linguistics. From linguistical sutra, there are 5 kinds of sutras in linguistic. In Panini Sutra, according to Mahabhashya of Patanjali, Panini Sutras, they're different, and among the 5 different kinds of sutras, there is Paribhasha Sutra. Paribhasha Sutra is the sutra which defines definitive statement, which defines the rule where the rule was not established. Aniyame niyamakarini paribhasha. So what does it mean? It means that there are different statements, and the statements describing certain things, and these statements may sound little disjointed, but there is a certain sutra which established the rule where the rule has not been yet established. And then once this sutra is established, when this rule is established, all the other sutras, they more or less follow this rule. It's how to explain this. It will be, I hope it will be clear. Like, for example, in this particular case, he lists different avatars. In the whole of Srimad-Bhagavatam, there will be so many avatars. In the very beginning, in the 3rd chapter, this is the first attempt to list different avatars of the Supreme Lord in which he comes to this world. And there is no rule how to understand who is higher, who is lower. Which avatar is more prominent, which avatar is more significant. Like in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Nrisimhadev is established, and Lord Ramachandra is also described. Who is more important? The pastime of Lord Nrisimhadev, the whole 7th canto, or a bigger half of the 7th canto, is describing this. And just a couple of chapters in the 9th canto describing Lord Ramachandra. Who is more important? This topic of avatars is one of the most important topics of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's one of the most important topics in all Vedic literature. And people who are looking from outside on the Vedic literature, they become bewildered. They say, all this Hare Krishnas, they are so, he comes like a tortoise, he comes like fish, he comes like, God knows whom, like a horse. They just cannot understand, they cannot figure out what is the rule. So here is aniyame niyamakarini. There should be one very succinct statement which brings everything in order, which will put everything into its place, and which will ultimately explain everything very neatly. So this rule is called Paribhasha. And Srila Jiva Goswami says, here is Paribhasha Sutra, this is look. He listed all the list, and he will speak about all these avatars in the future. Now it's the best time to establish this rule, how to understand all these incarnations and how to make sense out of them, and how to understand them. And it's not a fanatical statement, it's a very logical statement. He explains that, this statement, where it is placed. First of all, it is placed in the chapter which is called Guhya Janmadhyaya, the chapter which specifically is devoted to description of the avatars. And that's the first place in the whole of Srimad-Bhagavatam where all the avatars are listed. Then after that, many times the avatars will be listed. In the second canto, in the 7th chapter, there will be list of avatars. And so many other mentions of avatars will be there. So he says, from the placement of this statement, it's the ideal place to establish the rule, Paribhasha. Paribhasha literally means Paribhasha, all-round statement. The very clear, unambiguous, and definitive statement which will shed light into all other statements which are there. And if this statement is not there, and if we don't understand that this is Paribhasha Sutra, then we will read Srimad-Bhagavatam, we will read other Puranas, and we will say, yeah, very nice. Nrisimha is nice, and Matsya is nice, and Kurma is nice, and Ganesh is especially nice, and Rajiv Gandhi is also nice. So something like this, we will not be able to make sense out of it. We will think that they're all on the same level. They are not on the same level, because in a specific sense, they are all on the same level, as Prabhupada explains, being Vishnu Tattvas, but they display different amounts of energy and love. They are not as complete manifestation. Only Krishna is the most complete manifestation, most perfect manifestation. And not only Krishna who is Krishna, but Krishna who is in Vrindavan. He is the most perfect. Everyone else is just perfect and more perfect, but Krishna is the most perfect. So this is Paribhasha. First of all, it's very succinct. Second of all, it establishes the rule where the rule has not been established. Third of all, it's placed in a very appropriate place for the Paribhasha Sutra in Janma Guhya Adhyaya, the mystery of Bhagavan's appearances. In this way, this definitive statement of Paribhasha Sutra is basically sheds light on all other statements, and therefore Srila Jiva Goswami says this statement is the emperor statement. As much as the emperor rules in a very authoritarian way by his subjects, and everyone else is subjected to him, everyone else is submissive to him, the same way, if there is any other statements in Srimad-Bhagavatam which contradict to this statement, they have to be understood in the light of this statement. This Paribhasha Sutra, as I said, as Srila Jiva Goswami says, it sheds the light upon all the other statements in the book, like the lamp. Lamp is in one place in a room, but it dissipates the darkness in all other places in the room, being in one place. Somebody may say, this is a completely inappropriate understanding, because this is just one statement. You're making the whole philosophy taking this one statement. But there are so many other statements. There are so many other statements in Srimad-Bhagavatam where it is said that Krishna is Amsha, that he is part. Srila Jiva Goswami says, no, this one statement is enough, because it's emperor, it establishes the rule, it doesn't have to be repeated many times. It's like this, if emperor issues the order, because this order is so strong, it doesn't have to be repeated. He just issues this order once, and everyone is supposed to know this order and follow this order. Or it's like this, when we take initiation, we come to our Guru Maharaj and we say, "Dear Guru Maharaj, I will follow 4 regulative principles." You state it once, but then you follow it the whole life. It's not that the next time you have to repeat it again to follow it. You wake up next morning and you say, okay, let's figure out which principles I should follow today. No. You stated it once, but you follow it the whole life. So the same way, in the beginning of Srimad-Bhagavatam, this statement, which is stated once, yes, but it explains everything else. It explains the message of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It explains the message of Vedic literature, because Srila Jiva Goswami says that Srimad-Bhagavatam is the highest Vedic literature written by Srila Vyasadeva at the end of his life, after he has written all the other Puranas. And therefore, this statement does not rule over Srimad-Bhagavatam only, other statements of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It rules over all other statements of other Puranas. If in Puranas or in Mahabharata there is some other statement, contrary statement, you have to explain this in the light of this particular statement, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, not to be bewildered, not to say this. This is how strong this Paribhasha Sutra is, and therefore how important it is to understand that this is Paribhasha. So, I'm not finished, but my time is over. So let me try to very quickly sum up, say a few more words in this regard. Please bear with me a few more minutes. Srila Jiva Goswami then shows in a very beautiful way, he gives many examples from Srimad-Bhagavatam. Many examples, more than a dozen examples, where Krishna is called Amsha, where Krishna is called part. And he explains in each particular case how, by using this sutra, this statement that Krishna is not an Amsha, and not a Kala, how the statements can be very harmoniously explained. Many times it is called Amshena. Krishna is called that Amshena is a Tritiya Bhakti, instrumental case. In many cases it is said Krishna came Amshena. So Tritiya Bhakti means that Krishna came as Amsha and was acting as Amsha. But it's a very simple rule in Sanskrit grammar that Tritiya Bhakti also means together with. So when in Srimad-Bhagavatam it is said that Krishna came in the form of Amsha, Amshena, it doesn't mean that he is Amsha and he is Amsha of Bhagavan. It means that Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan, has come together with his Amsha, together with Balarama or together with Narayana, who was with himself, and in this way they were killing demons, because it's not Krishna who is killing demons. It's Narayana in himself who is killing demons. So that's just a sample how to reconcile these different statements. And believe me, or read Krishna Sandarbha, it's a very beautiful. In every case, this one statement really sheds the beautiful light on other statements. Then Srila Jiva Goswami explains in great detail an episode of Mahakalapur. At the very end of Srimad-Bhagavatam, there is this story how Krishna and Arjuna, they traveled to Mahavishnu, to Mahakalapur, to the city of Mahavishnu, of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And there, in this episode, this Mahakalapur, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu says, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Please come back to me soon. You just kill all the Asuras and come back to me." So what does it mean? It basically means that you came from me, now you come back to me and be with me, or basically be within me. So this is the superficial reading or superficial understanding of this important chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srila Jiva Goswami, in extremely beautiful way, explains what is the intention of this chapter and how to understand this statement, and how actually Mahakalapur or Garbhodakashaya Vishnu says that I wanted to see you, Krishna. You're so beautiful. I couldn't see you. I couldn't see your pastimes, because it's only those whom you allow to see this past. And ultimately, this episode proves that Garbhodakashaya Vishnu is subordinate to Krishna. Krishna is the source of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And he again, while explaining this, he takes this understanding that this lingam statement is weaker than Shruti statement. In this particular case, this whole episode is explaining something, but it's explaining through lingams, through the inference, basically. Again, I don't have time to explain this beautiful episode, although maybe some other time we will explain while describing the pastimes of Lord Krishna. It's a beautiful episode. And then he says, then for a long time he explains how to understand that Krishna and Balaram are two hairs of Mahavishnu. This story is described in many Puranas, in Mahabharata, in Nrisimha Purana, in Skanda Purana, in Padma Purana, and even in Srimad-Bhagavatam it is mentioned that when demigods came to Mahavishnu, he plucked out two hairs from his head. One hair was white and one hair was black. And he said, all these two hairs will become Krishna and Balaram, and they will extinguish all the burden in the earth. So he explains beautifully in all the details, very seriously, every possible meaning of these verses from these Puranas and Mahabharata. And basically he says, first of all, it's not that Garbhodakashaya Vishnu become, old and therefore he became gray-haired. And Keshav does not necessarily mean hairs. Keshav means Shakti, and specifically directly in Nrisimha Purana it is said that this is two Shaktis. And Kesha means Ka, Isho, Kesho means Kaisho, the rulers of bliss, and so many beautiful explanations he says. And he says that when Garbhodakashayi Vishnu plucks out these two hairs, he says he just wants to show how easily it will be for Swayam Bhagavan Krishna to remove the burden of the earth together with Balaram. And this whole gesture is not to explain that this is the hair who become Vishnu, because and who became Balaram, white hair, and who became Vishnu. So anyway, the very important explanation is given, and very detailed explanation is given there. And then, and again, I will do it very quickly. Then he says, please listen now very carefully. That's the last thing which I will say. He says that the emperor is called Chakravarti. Chakra means the wheel. And Chakravarti, the statement of Chakravarti is like the spoke of this wheel, and the whole wheel of Srimad-Bhagavatam is rotating around this statement. Ete cham shakalach pumsach Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. He says, but sometimes the emperor, and even though the power of emperor is enough to prove that he is the supreme ruler, he doesn't need anyone else, to prove this. And while fighting with the enemies, the emperor basically he himself fights. He is the main fighter. It's not that he's hiding somewhere in the bomb shelter like nowadays. The emperor in the Vedic time, they were fighting themselves. So he says that this one statement as an emperor, it's enough to conquer over all the opposing statements, to explain all the opposing statements from the light of this statement. So there is no need for anything else. But sometimes, after conquering over the enemies, the emperor goes into his city and he parades, and behind him his whole army follows. In the same way, this emperor, Ete cham shakalach pumsach, he has his army in Srimad-Bhagavatam. Basically, he says there are so many other arguments which prove this statement, and even though this statement doesn't need to be proven, still we can employ these other statements to show that Srimad-Bhagavatam is to show that Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, that he is the very, very special form of Bhagavan with whom we could and should and must develop our relationship, and only with this form of Bhagavan, not with anyone else. And he basically says that the army of the emperor consists of 4 divisions. There is chariots. This is the main in the Vedic army. In the Vedic times, the chariots were like tanks, so this is the tank. Tanks are very important and very strong. Then there is elephants, and then there is cavalry, the people on the horses, and then there is infantry. There is people who are just walking soldiers. So he says, in the same way, Srimad-Bhagavatam, we can show how this emperor who is leading this army, how he shows his army, and how he shows that there are some other statements in Srimad-Bhagavatam which actually prove the same point. And again, very briefly, he says that what are the chariots? The chariots are numerous statements in Srimad-Bhagavatam, in other places of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which directly say that Krishna is the source of all other incarnations. Like, for example, when the demigods are praying to Krishna in the womb of Mother Devaki, they're saying, you're the source of Matsya and horse incarnation and Kurma incarnation and so on and so forth. So many statements he gives which says the same thing, that all avatars are coming ultimately from Krishna, and Krishna is their source. So that's the chariots. Many chariots are there in this army of this emperor. Then there are elephants, really big elephants, huge, strong elephants. What are the strong elephants of this emperor? The strong elephants of this emperor is that Krishna is the subject matter of all major dialogues in Srimad-Bhagavatam. If we analyze how the dialogue started, the dialogue between Sutta Goswami and the Naimisharanya, sages of Naimisharanya, then the dialogue between Narada and Vyasadeva, then within this dialogue, then the dialogue between Maharaja Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami, and then the dialogue between Maitreya Muni and Vidura, and before that the dialogue between Uddhava and Vidura, and then the dialogue between Yudhishthira and Narada Muni. If we analyze all of them, everywhere we see that Krishna is the subject matter. They are talking about Krishna. They want to know about Krishna. So this is the elephants. Every one of these can be shown that Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That this is the subject matter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and Krishna is special. Krishna is not just an avatar, just Vilas Rupa of Narayana. It's Narayana who is Vilas Rupa of Krishna. And then there is horses. This I wanted to explain in more details, but there is no time. The horses is this inferential, is this analysis which I already explained, that there is Shruti statement which was already there, then there is Linga statement, and then there is Vakya statement, and then there is Prakarana statement, and then there is Samakya statement. So all these things, so Srila Jiva Goswami explains again in a beautiful way how in Srimad-Bhagavatam you not only find this Shruti statement, very direct, independent statement that Krishna is special, but you also find some weaker statement, inferential statement like Linga and Prakarana according to context, and Vakya according to the linguistic expectation, and so on and so forth. So all this beautiful linguistic analysis of the verses of Srimad-Bhagavatam, very lovingly done by Srila Jiva Goswami to explain this point. And then the final, the infantry, he did it actually in the previous Sandarbha, in Paramatma Sandarbha. He explains, this is Sat Pramanas, 6 Pramanas. I'm sorry, not 5, I mentioned 5, it's 6. 6 Pramanas, how all 6 Pramanas are there in Srimad-Bhagavatam, in the language of Srimad-Bhagavatam, that Krishna is not an avatar, he is the source of all avatars. And then 6 Pramana, and then 6 Shad Linga, 6 indicators. Samharana, Upakrama Samharana, Abhyasa, and so on and so forth. So he did this analysis of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, that Srimad Bhagavatam is all about Krishna according to this principle, hermeneutical principles of Mimamsa Sutra, in this way to prove this particular point. So we don't have time for this, but this whole explanation is also to impress upon us the importance of understanding hermeneutics. Because to understand books of Srila Prabhupada, they are deceivingly simple. Sometimes we may think that I understand what Prabhupada wants to say. And so many people, they fight with each other because everyone thinks that he understands what Srila Prabhupada wants to say. Somebody says this, somebody says that. We read Bible day and night, you see black and I see white. So this is the famous statement. So one subsidiary point of this presentation is that we really have to be very honest, and we really have to understand the hermeneutical principles, how to understand very complex Vedic literature, and ultimately, we will be able to understand this unambiguous point, which is clear and still which was missed by many, many extremely intelligent commentators. And if it was not for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Rupa Goswami, who wrote Laghu Bhagavatamrita, and Srila Sanatana Goswami, who proved the same thing in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and Srila Jiva Goswami, who wrote the whole huge book, Krishna Sandarbha, on this topic, we would never be able to understand this. Only because we are standing on the shoulders of these giants, we are able to see it. And if we reject the shoulders of these giants, and Srila Prabhupada came and he explained the same thing in understandable for us manner, if we reject the shoulders of these giants, we will become the little dwarfs as we are ourselves. And we will never be able to reach Krishna. We will never be able to reach even Lord Narayana. We will be doomed to rot in this material world. But standing on the shoulders of these giants and dancing on their shoulders, we will be able to become happy devotees who are in samadhi, reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, and in samadhi chanting the holy name of Krishna, understanding there is nothing more important and there is nothing more powerful than these practices of chanting the holy name and reading Srimad-Bhagavatam, especially 10th canto, and in the 10th canto especially Rasa Lila. Then we will be able to understand the inner import, and we will never mix it with the gross sexual perversion or sexual reflection of this pastime in this material world. I'm really sorry for such a long class, but now I'm finished. I don't hear you. You are muted. You're totally muted. I don't hear a word. No, I still don't hear anything. Maybe it's an indication that we should finish now. No, I don't hear. Почему? Может быть... конечно, ты же этот самый. Нужно быть... Okay. Please say something now.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. Now, Guru Maharaj, it wasn't really that, you shouldn't be saying that it took longer time. Honestly speaking, we should have continued. And so there is one part first I would like to say that you said quite a few times that there is a lot more to share, but you could not. So we would like that is all that you couldn't share today. We request you to kindly share it in the future classes when they resume in June. That's one. Secondly, you said right at the end that we want more devotees, or rather happy devotees. We have a saying, and you must be aware, particularly in the SPT views, we say more devotees, happier devotees. But I think today's class has led us to another very deep reflection that not only more devotees or happier devotees, but mature devotees. And I think this class was very exemplifying the importance of maturity in Krishna consciousness. Like all of your sessions, they have two emotions that at least I can represent from my side. One is of absolute hopelessness, and the other is hope. So, therefore, your sessions have to be reflected upon, content reach out to many. Therefore, with folded hands, I also request all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis who stayed on to kindly listen to this. Anupama Radharani Mataji wrote back to me that I have listened to this many, many, many times, and I request everyone else also. And also, I would request you to kindly circulate, this because it will be on YouTube on our channel. So kindly circulate to as many devotees as possible. Now, the high point or the takeaway, there are plenty of them, but one of them is that this particular verse that you took from the first canto, 3rd chapter, 28th verse, is actually establishes the very edifice of the entire Srimad-Bhagavatam text. And if we miss this, Guru Maharaj, we actually are missing the bus. No matter when we boarded this bus, when we came into ISKCON, it could be 10 years, 30 years, 20 years, or whatever number of years. But if we have missed this particular understanding, then I think we've missed the bus, and that brings a bit of a hopelessness. But today's class can also bring us to hope, provided we are willing to get over the 9 distractions that you so lucidly explained from the Yoga Sutras. And I believe those are 1.30 to 32. Those were the 3 verses I think we explained. Because we didn't get the number. You did say the number from Yoga. Is that correct?
I think it's 130. 130.
Yeah.
Sutra 130.
130. Yeah, sorry. So, is there time for 1 or 2 questions? Anupama Radharani has sent. Is there time for 1?
Yes, 1 or 2 questions. Yes, why not?
Okay. So this is a question from Anupama Radharani from Dubai. The question is, please accept my respectful obeisances, Maharaj. Your class was as always very penetrating. Your message goes deep within our hearts. Thank you, Maharaj. You mentioned unless we are completely pure, we cannot go to the spiritual world. That purity is that Jiva having 78% of the qualities of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada made a concession that even if we are 60% Krishna conscious, we can go back. My question is, those souls who attain the supreme planet but are not completely pure, do they have a greater chance of falling back into the material world as compared to those who are 100% pure?
No, you will not be able to carry on your impurity to the spiritual world. Don't worry. If Srila Prabhupada promised to drag you to the spiritual world, he will make sure that you are purified. It's just Srila Prabhupada will accept the 40% of your impurities and will make you completely pure. So don't worry about this. No problem. You will not be carrying your impurities in the spiritual world. You will look very strange there. So don't worry.
Okay, so there is one more question from her now. If it's okay with you, can I ask that also?
Sure.
Okay. Sometimes we hit a wall while chanting and we encounter the distractions that you explained. No matter how hard we try to concentrate, our mind does not cooperate. In such a situation, to bring our consciousness back to listening to the holy names, should we take shelter of reading the Srimad-Bhagavatam? I mean, not while chanting though.
Yeah, definitely. Reading of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it's a companion book. We have to read Srimad-Bhagavatam together with chanting of the holy name. They all go together. They are inseparable in one sense. So, yes, we cannot chant all the time because our mind is not adjusted to this. But therefore, we need to read Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad-Bhagavatam. As I said last lecture, not only Srimad-Bhagavatam, but reading of Chaitanya Charitamrita is very important. while chanting and to understand Srimad-Bhagavatam. So both of the books should be read carefully every day.
So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
we have another, we'll have another moments of celebration during these 3 weeks. So I think, to all of us, let's keep listening in to the previous lectures of Maharaj, which are all there on School of Vedic Studies YouTube channels. Please let's do that. And then we'll resume back the sessions in the first week of June, and we will let you know. From the bottom of our hearts, Maharaj, thank you so very much. All glories to His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj ki jai.
All glories to Srila
This
Prabhupada.
time, says Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai.